So my stay in Holland was in a metabolic unit whose meat and drink was obviously to do with pattern recognition, measurement, numerical data on the one hand, and that was in a clinical environment, and secondly to do with research into crystal growth, which also was needed to be described in mathematical terms, actually in Michaelis-Menten enzyme type of kinetic mathematics, and which plagued me for years in terms of trying to find explanations for how the material grew. And in retrospect, this was obviously feeding an intuition of mine, an intellectual intuition of mine, that the information technology also allowed some outlet. Well, in practice, this also turned into an intuition to try to explain the role and the place of measurement and digitization in the clinical and other spheres. And so I've ruminated for years about how to explain this. And of course, this was helped by the development in the 90s of the audit culture and evidence-based medicine up to a point. But many colleagues seem to sort of take this for granted as being sort of obviously how it should be. And things like health services research were not at that point properly labelled, as it were. So this was a kind of early approach to the role of measurement and IT in clinical affairs. And I found myself in the UK Renal Registry reports writing about the methodological implications of the data gathering and registration. And I was always keen to add value to the collected material on the basis that it would only be complete and accurate if people actually got something out of it. The health services research thing, I think, was important because what was seen as basic science held all the interest for a lot of people from the point of view of reputation, and the reputation of technologies was pretty low. And I did try to explore the fact that audit itself was a scientific activity, in that one typically posited a system, explored it, proved it or not, and then went round the loop again. And this seems to me to be absolutely scientific and to be respected just as much as any basic mechanisms. Of course, it tends to be a little parochial, and it tends to be transient in time, but that doesn't mean to say the intellectual challenge is any less or any less respectable, and I think that's come to be seen to be the case in time. I might think if there was a touchstone of this sort of thing, it might be Bayes' theorem, because that was part of the development of clinical epidemiology as conveyed by David Sackett. Actually, Harry Hall had discussed it in the mid-60s even, and it became increasingly useful to everybody, but it was really projected mostly through the clinical epidemiology and subsequently the evidence-based medicine movements. But these are very long timescales when you think about it. I mean, we're talking now well over 50 years for the insights to be fully explored and fully appreciated. And so that was, if there was any kind of technical issue lurking in the whole cultural development, you could argue that it was the Bayes theorem.